Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes' Tottenham Blog and today's analysis of our new head coach, Nuno Espirito Santo. 72 days after the dismissal of Jose Mourinho, we finally have a new man in. Today I'm joined by Dave from Talking Wolves to get the Wolves insight into Nuno Espirito Santo, what he could bring to Tottenham and what we have to look forward to over the next 2 or 3 years. Before we do dive into that, Dave, thank you so much for your time today. It's a pleasure to have you on the channel, and how are you getting on?
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Looking forward to it. Of course, didn't really know what to expect when Nuno left the club at the end of the season. But as a, I was going to say as a fan of Wolves, but as someone who admired Nuno for the last few years, I'm glad that he's found himself at a pretty good club, I've got to say.
Well, that'll get you in the good side of the Tottenham fans already, because that isn't the general feeling about the club at the moment. But I suppose we'll start there with when Nuno left Wolves. So I remember you tweeted out you were just in complete shock when the announcement was made by Wolves that Nuno would be leaving. Was there any feeling at all within the fan base that this may have been coming, or was it just completely out of the blue?
It's weird. For me, I felt I was in complete shock. I really didn't see it coming. Throughout a lot of last season, probably from about January, there was a lot of negativity starting to be shown at the club and the players. And unfortunately, then it started to, obviously, the one person, when things aren't going your way, the one person that starts to get the blame is the manager. So probably from January, cracks started to show in the fan base, from this fan base who are almost 99% behind Nuno, started to slowly go to sort of 50-50. There was like 50% of the fans that were completely behind him, and then there was a big proportion of fans that wouldn't have, were calling for his head, actually. So I remember when I was actually at work when it got broken that he was going to be leaving at the end of the season, and someone told me, and I thought it was a joke until obviously I went on social media and saw it was legit. So I was really shocked, but it was just for the next 2 or 3 days. That's all anybody was talking about. Even people that I was speaking to at work were talking about it. It was a massive talking point, really. So a little bit of a shock. Obviously, the club said it was mutual. There's been reports since that said he was sort of nudged out by the club. So we don't know the full ins and outs, but at the time it was a real shock, really, among the fan base.
Yeah, I remember Tottenham fans being in that exact mindset. Because of course, we were looking for a manager at that stage, and there, as there always is, there was these names, even though they were at other clubs, kind of being linked. And the second it was announced that Nuno would be leaving, he shot to the top of the betting odds, and everyone
Yeah.
was looking at that. And I put up a video. I remember it was my best pre-recorded video in about a month, because people were really on the Nuno train, thinking it was going to happen. And then we had our whole debacle with Mauricio Pochettino and Antonio Conte, and we almost gone full circle now with the appointment of Nuno. But from a Wolves point of view, do you think this is a good appointment for Tottenham, or do you think the challenge could be, since it's such a different one for Nuno, could it be something he could struggle to step up to the plate for?
It's a really interesting one. A Spurs fan asked me the same sort of question yesterday, and I said it depends what Nuno you get, in the sense of we've seen probably for 3 quarters of his time at Molineux a really positive, very smart, very sort of outside the box thinking manager. And then unfortunately for the last season or so, we've seen a very almost one dimensional and one plan sort of manager. So it really does depend what Nuno you get. I mean, he came into the club, a couple of years ago when we were in the Championship, just coming off the back of leaving Porto. And to be fair, I'd not known much about him. I didn't really follow Portuguese football too closely. So, I think at the time it was a bit of a coup really for the club, because I think it was a massive, for someone that was managing one of the best clubs in Portugal and Champions League football to come down to the Championship. He's obviously got reassurances that money was going to be pumped into the club. And imagine now a Championship club signing a player of the same caliber as Diogo Jota, Ruben Neves. It was never going to happen. So I think he got backed very well in the Championship. But I never thought he would be able to get 2 back-to-back seventh place finishes. The first season managing to get us into Europe. Second season, I think you guys pipped us to it in the end, finishing sixth on the last game of the season. So I think if you ignore this season, he's done a fantastic job, really. And the way he set up the tactics, we saw predominantly a five at the back system before this season, 100% of the time. Five at the back, whether that be 5-3-2 or like a 5-2-3 or 3-4-3. But this season he tried to mix it up a little bit. I think he wanted to do that. Unfortunately, the injuries that we had with Jimenez and a few other players sort of held Nuno back a little bit. But we saw a four at the back system a lot more, a 4-2-3-1, which looked fantastic in some games, like attacking wise and going forward. I've never seen Wolves attack under Nuno like that. Unfortunately for us, our back four in defence probably wasn't strong enough to play that system, because it left us quite open. And you sort of understand it when you've got a set of defenders that have played with a back five or a back three for the last 4 years to all of a sudden chuck them into a back four. You're not going to expect it to go perfectly. So it really does depend. I think if you get a Nuno that comes to Tottenham and wants to attack, I think you could be onto a winner. But if you get the Nuno that we've seen this year, who is almost, unfortunately, a little bit Mourinho-esque, where he's going to sort of almost try and nick that goal and just sit on it for the rest of the game and just stink the place out, then I think Spurs fans will be disappointed. But from what I've seen, from what the new director of football and what the chairman has said, that it sounds like Nuno has promised to bring that attack inside to Spurs.
Yeah, and well, you just made the point there about Jose Mourinho. Remember, you said it to me on Twitter about a week back, and I've been quoting that in every video I've made about Nuno because as much as we can look at the positives, I think that is definitely something we do need to pay attention to. But from what we're hearing, it is apparently the new director of football, Fabio Paratici, showed our chairman videos of how Nuno actually played at Valencia. It's kind of showing the attack of football, which to me was a bit surprising because I do think he has played a lot of good football at Wolves. But as you say, there's two very, very different segments here. There's the first 3 years and there is last year. And I'm going back to when you were in the Championship. If I remember correctly, when he was appointed, he was your fourth manager in the space of a year. You were a very kind of unstable club. You didn't really know where you were going. I think you just bounced back up from the League One maybe. And he managed to come in and do an absolutely incredible job there. And you mentioned the transfer of Ruben Neves. At the time, I remember so many top teams being after him, and it was a complete shock when he went to Wolves. Turns out to have been a very, very good move for him. What kind of transfer pull do you think Nuno could bring to Spurs, considering the players he's managed to bring into Wolves? Do you think he could really bring in these targets we're looking at?
It's an interesting one because you look at his actual sort of transfer history and he's brought in some very impressive talents into the club. I'll probably say Wolves fans are very disappointed with our transfer business probably since our first season in the Premier League. But that sort of championship season and the first season in the Premier League, you look at the players that he brought in for a club of Wolves' size at the time, for a club that were newly promoted as well, to bring in the likes of Rui Patricio and João Moutinho at the time was just like, what? So if you think now Spurs, who are, I'm happy to say, a team that are better reputation, a better calibre than Wolves, you can just imagine what sort of players that he may well be able to bring in. But it isn't just about Nuno. Obviously, it's about Jorge Mendes, really. But from what I know, Nuno was his first ever client. They're very, very close friends. So Mendes is always going to look after Nuno with that sort of thing. And there's plenty of players out there, and it's not just players that have Jorge Mendes as an agent. It's clubs that Jorge Mendes is close with. For argument's sake, there's a lot of Portuguese players that we've done dealings with that aren't even part of Jorge Mendes' Gestafu agency. But because Mendes has got close ties with other teams like Atletico Madrid, Monaco, a lot of the Portuguese clubs, obviously, he can do some deals. But it'll be interesting because I remember I read a report just after Mourinho had gone and Nuno was linked that Mendes wasn't comfortable with Nuno going there, and apparently he didn't want Mourinho to go to Spurs either. I don't know how true that is, so I was quite surprised to see Nuno join Spurs, but I still think it's a good step up for him and his career personally. So transfer wise, I think you should have no problems. Obviously, Spurs have got their own infrastructure there. They've got this new director of football who's pretty good from what I know, and then you've got Mendes on top of it. I think you've got a pretty good base of knowledge and scouting network to work with there.
I love to hear it, and I think George Mendes may have had a bit of an insight into what was coming at Spurs when he didn't want Jose to come, because things have really gone downhill in the last couple of years. And it's good, I suppose, that Nuno does have that experience of kind of stabilising a club and managing to make that progression from a very unsure situation. And when he did get into the Premier League, like you said, it was two consecutive seventh place finishes. You managed to make it to the quarter-final of Europa League as well. Was there any kind of particular kind of tactics or kind of little tactical nouses that Nuno used, or was it just that whole 5 or 3 at the back system that just really thrived with the players that were at the club?
It was, he did, you could see depending on opponent and depending on situation. So, say for argument's sake, probably one of the best passages or best sequences I can remember is we went to Besiktas on a Thursday night in the Europa League and went to Turkey, and Nuno, like I said earlier, just stank the place out. We played 5, I can't remember if it's 5-3-2 or 5-2-3, but he played so deep. and frustrated the life out of Besiktas. And I remember at half time of that game, social media was just toxic about what on earth are we doing? You know, what Europa League? Why are we playing like this? And I just remember, I thought, you know what, you think of away games. You know, Turkey's such a difficult place to go in terms of games. And I remember towards the end of the game, we just started creeping and creeping and creeping forward. And in the end, we got a last minute winner and won the game 1-0. And everyone's like, yeah, it's like we set up the game perfectly and everything. And then 2 days later, or the Sunday, 3 days later, we went and played Man City, did the exact same thing, sat so deep for the game, frustrated the life out of City. I even remember we played a Adama Traore right wing back, and everyone was like, what's going on? And then as the game went on, we started creeping forward, and City obviously pushing for a winner. We did them twice on a counter attack and beat them 2-0. So I think he's very clever and knowledgeable, you know, about that sort of thing. And that's when Wolves, I think the Europa League did us a lot of favours that season. I think a lot of Wolves fans expected us to struggle, but the Europa League almost just kept giving us a momentum. And I remember when we beat you guys at the new ground last season as well. We played in Europe on the Thursday and then went to Spurs straight away and did a good job on you there. And I'm just intrigued to see how he's going to set up. And I think a lot of it is probably to do with the future of Harry Kane. I think obviously Harry Kane is world class, and you could argue that he's the best striker in the world on his day. And, you know, I'm not going to compare him directly to Jimenez, but I think the similar mould of player. And Nuno got some fantastic results out of Jimenez and players around him. So I will be intrigued to see if Nuno goes with that 5 at the back system. I think he can possibly do that, and I think maybe with the likes of Matt Doherty, try and get the best out of him again in that system, or if he'll go with that 4 at the back system that he tried at Wolves last season. But like you said, I've seen reports as well of him mentioning his time at Valencia. So I think he's got a catalogue. You know, his CV is full of different systems that he's tried and tested and have been successful in spells. So it is going to be interesting to see how he will do at Spurs and how he'll set up.
Yeah, I think it is going to be interesting, like I say, because of the different things he's using. What we're hearing is that Paratici wants us to play a 3 at the back, but things don't always go to plan for Spurs. And it's interesting you bring up Matt Doherty, which I'll touch on in a sec. But I remember that game against Manchester City. It was obviously like a shock result there, and like you mentioned, the victories against Spurs. It's what a lot of our fans have kind of been looking towards. You know, you can talk about the defensive football and the tough times that Nuno has had, but there's been this almost weird dynamic between Tottenham and Wolves in the last couple of seasons, where we seem to consistently win at Molineux, but you seem to consistently win at our stadium, and it's kind of hard to gauge where exactly all of that stands. But hopefully we'll be winning at Molineux in our stadium next season. But with Matt Doherty, was an incredible player at Wolves, and Nuno definitely a big part of that. But came into Spurs, had a decent first month or so, and then just completely went downhill. People are even now saying that Sergio Aurier is a better right back option than him, which isn't something I'd ever say about anybody. But how exactly did Matt Doherty become the player that he was at Wolves? Was it kind of an over reliance on the right hand side with the link up of him and Adama Traore, or was it just the system suited him?
But I think, I don't know how you guys have seen him. Unfortunately, I've not seen much of him at Spurs, but he definitely, going forward, he was fantastic, and he's probably, Wolves fans don't want to admit it, but I think we have missed him this season in the fact that he's not just a wing back that went up and down the right hand side. You can see some of his goals, and I'll use the Europa League as an example again. I think it was against Braga away, and he picks up the ball on the right hand side, and there's a couple of passes, and the next thing you know, he's at the back post on the opposite side of the pitch, knocking in a goal. He just runs diagonals and just like. He makes runs. Defenders are obviously taught to watch the runs of attackers, your wingers and strikers, but he makes the runs that no defenders expect and scored the goals, really. So, that's what Nuno can bring. And I think a lot of Wolves fans are disappointed with his defensive work rate and so on. But I think in a back 5 system, you can afford to maybe lose one player, because then you've got another 3 centre-backs sort of watching out for him. And I think he had... Who did we have right centre back? The first year we had someone like Ryan Bennett watching him, who obviously is very defensive and strong. And we mixed that up over the last couple of years. But I think, Wolves fans don't like to admit that we missed Doherty, but I think this season we have missed those attacking runs. And him and Nuno had a great relationship. I've seen interviews about it before. Just because they've got stuff that they've got in common off the field as well, and they just had. I think Nuno's going to be really excited to be reunited with him, really, and it could give him a fresh start at Spurs for next season.
Yeah, I really hope it does. As a Spurs fan and as an Irishman, to see Matt Doherty playing well, it would be a dream come true. But the loss of Doherty wasn't the only reason that Wolves kind of regressed defensively in the last season. As you mentioned, the transition to four at the back as well. I think a few players maybe just didn't quite fit into that system. Is there any insight you can give us on kind of what Nuno did with that defence and the tactics that maybe led to those struggles?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird overall because over the if we ignore last season, the 3 years before that, Wolves just were very very solid defensively overall. I think every big team, your Cities, your Liverpools, your Uniteds, your Spurs, your Arsenals, were just they didn't look forward to the game against Wolves just because they know how difficult it was going to be to score and how strong we were counter attacking. But last year it was just like the complete opposite, and I don't know what that was. Obviously, we for the large part of the season we missed that big man in Jimenez up front. We had a lot of new personnel, and I don't know what it was. I remember when we got knocked out of the Europa League, which you mentioned earlier. Nuno said at the end, basically, he wanted to try something completely new with the team. He wanted to dominate possession more. He wanted to attack more. And the first game of the season just gone against Sheffield United, we were phenomenal and beat them 2-0. Centre backs were just bombing forward as well, and it was just like wow, like maybe we've got a fresh start here, but it was just defensively we were just so leaky, and it was a lot of I don't even want to say individual errors really, just the back four or back five as a whole was just complete just off, really really poor. But Nuno just didn't seem to have any answers for it throughout the whole season, but probably from sort of December, January, you just could tell he wasn't himself. If he already knew maybe the club were planning to lose him at the end of the season, I don't know. A lot of people pointing it towards obviously COVID and him not seeing his family as often. But he just didn't seem himself, and really down, and just didn't have the desire almost, or he didn't seem like he had the desire that he had and the passion that he had for the previous years. So in terms of tactics, I think unfortunately he tried to play it quite safe, sit us really deep. I think he almost wanted us to not concede rather than attack, and I think he would have been happy with 0-0 draws and us attack and get at the risk of losing by a few more goals, which unfortunately happened this year. Um, but I can't put a finger on it. I don't think Nuno could put a finger on it. Whenever he was asked about it, he couldn't answer it. But I think a fresh start for him now could be interesting. I know a lot of Spurs fans are disappointed with it, and I've seen that as well. But I think you do have to give him a chance. I think with a better caliber of player like he's got at Spurs, it could be really really dangerous.
Yeah, I think that is a general feeling. It is a sense of underwhelming for us, but it also could have been a whole lot worse. Like, this time last week, or maybe a week and a half ago, we think we could end up with Gennaro Gattuso. So it is
Yeah.
definitely it's kind of this nice middle ground that we found with a lot more positives than maybe other candidates that came in. One of the last things I want to ask you is Nuno's work with young players at Wolves, because he said in his first interview with Spurs, which you can tell is very scripted by Daniel Levy, because he's used the word DNA like 6 times. But he mentioned the Tottenham Youth Academy and his desire to work with players like that. And there's one line in particular he said where he said if there's a gap in the senior team, or if there's a player injured or something, no matter what the experience, no matter what the kind of reputation of that young player is, if he's needed to step up, he will be given that chance in the first team. So did he have a similar kind of philosophy at Wolves? I know a player like maybe Rayan Aït-Nouri really thrived this season. Was his work with young players really impressive?
Yeah, I mean, he had a very young squad throughout his whole time at Wolves. In terms of actually bringing players through the academy and into the first team, I'm not going to say he never did it, because he did, but probably a lot less often than maybe fans wanted. I think, to be fair, Wolves academy at the moment is such a strange time. Historically we've had a pretty good setup, but last few years haven't been as strong, I don't think. But he's given chances to likes of Morgan Gibbs White. He gave a lot of game time to before he was loaned out earlier this season. Owen Otasowi's come through the under-23s academy, the big American midfielder. He's given time to Max Kilman as well, defender. So he has given time to players. I don't think he's not one of those types of managers just to throw him in the first team for the sake of it. I think he needs to see them impress and do well in training before he does that. But it wouldn't surprise me to see these younger players on the bench a little bit more, cup games especially, he always goes with like a secondary team. I think the league, he always shows the league to be his priority, and I think with the added competition you've got this season, the Europa Conference, it'll be interesting to see how he approaches that as well. But League Cup especially, always backup goalkeeper, very rotated team we saw for Wolves, which disappointed a lot of Wolves fans, especially this season outside of Europe. We thought, maybe we could push for the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup, and it just wasn't the case. But yeah, where he sees fit, I think he does give those younger players the opportunity. Like you said, Ryan Aït-Nouri, our team in general this year was really young, and he does get good results out of these young players. And I think with Spurs, with some of the younger players coming through at the moment, it'll be interesting to see how he can bring them into the team and what he gets out of them.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing a lot of positives here, which is very reassuring. I think one of the young players I'd be looking at in particular is Ryan Sessegnon, just coming back from his loan at Hoffenheim and being a wing back. I think he could really be a player who does well under Nuno Espirito Santo. But look, only time will tell how this one is going to play out for Tottenham. Dave, do you want to give us a quick insight into your channel, Talking Wolves? I know you've recently hit 10k subscribers, and I've been looking a bit at the series you're doing, and the 5 players from each position, the free agents that Wolves should pick up, which I think could be of interest to Spurs fans as well, because our budget isn't always the best.
Yeah, appreciate it. So yeah, a similar sort of thing to you really. Just I've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube page, just keeping people up to date with what's going on at Wolves. Transfer news, especially, always busy this time of year. Just doing different things, like you said, looking at free agents, looking at different nationalities or positions and stuff like that as well. So yeah, talking Wolves on everything really.
Yeah, I'll make sure to link those down in the description. So anyone who is watching, if you do want to check out those videos on the free agents or Dave and any other social media, make sure to go down and check those in the description. If you are new to this channel as well and you want more content like this, plus the Tottenham Hotspur Transfer Talk series, which is going to be in full flow now that we have finally got a manager, please do hit that subscribe button and help us hit that 10k mark as well, which we're aiming to get before the end of the season. But all I have to say is, Dave, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate the insight you've given us onto Nuno, and to everyone who is watching, as always, thanks for watching.